Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast with Phil Graham. We help you master Facebook ads and give you an unfair advantage over your competition. Are you ready? Let's go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast, episode 361. I'm Phil Graham. I'm doing something a little bit different with today's episode. I'm going to be sharing a tier list of my favorite Facebook ad objectives. And we're going to go from my favorites all the way down to the objectives that I don't like very much, that don't seem to be very effective. And there's a lot of good stuff in here. This is going to be a great episode, whether you're an experienced advertiser or brand new or anybody in between. There are lots of great ad objectives for Facebook and Instagram ads. And many advertisers should be testing and working with these different options. There are so many different variables as to why you might test some, but not others. So today, like I said earlier, I created a tier list for you guys where I'm literally going to rank the objectives from best to worst in my humble opinion. Now, keep in mind, there are different reasons why you might use some of these objectives and not others. Obviously, for clients I'm working with, we do that for them, or I teach people how to figure that out for themselves. Because even some of the higher ranked objectives may not be right for certain types of situations. But in general, if I wasn't working with you personally and I had to give you a list from best to worst, this should be a great guide for you guys to follow and should definitely come in very handy and help you guys find some of the top objectives you should be testing. Using different ad objectives, even if you kept the audience and the creative the same, which I still wouldn't do, but even if you did, different objectives can absolutely affect how you succeed. It can affect your CPM. It can affect your cost per click, the sales you get, the cost per sale, the leads you get. And there's not one objective that always works best. That's why it's so important to test. So this tier list is really important. I want you guys to really test these different things because a different objective could be a total game changer for some of you guys. So I am excited you guys are here. I'm going to keep this episode short and full of value. But before we jump in, real quick, if you guys are looking for any one-on-one coaching to learn ads the right way, or if you want somebody to run your ads for you so you can do what you do best, for either one of those things, you can go to my website, philgrahamdigital.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at philgrahamdigital, and I would love to connect with you. So before I dive into my tier list, I want to talk about a couple mistakes that I don't want you to make. One mistake is using only one ad objective ever. That is a mistake for most advertisers. Now, there are caveats to that. There's certain clients that I've seen where we have everything dialed in, we know what's going on, and it might be wise to only use one objective. So there are caveats. But for most of you guys, for most advertisers, you're going to want to test different objectives. And even for me, when I'm testing, even if I have something that's working, I'm usually testing objectives here and there, depending on if I'm testing something else and what the budget is. There's lots of variables, but I'm still usually testing objectives pretty consistently. So make sure that you guys don't make that mistake of only using one ad objective pretty much all the time and never testing anything else. Another mistake I don't want you to make is not focusing on your audience and your creatives, because those things obviously absolutely matter. There is some misconceptions out there right now that you should just use an Advantage Plus audience and call it a day. That is not true. I've tested this so much and so often. I've found audiences that beat Advantage Plus. Advantage Plus sometimes works really good and other times it does horrible. You don't want to just use that and that's it. You should absolutely be testing other audiences like lookalike audiences and interest audience, behavior audiences, obviously retargeting and other things like that too. But don't fall into the trap of only using Advantage Plus because that is not smart. Also, make sure you're always testing different copy, different creatives and things like that. as well as the objectives that we're going to talk about today. So let's jump into my tier list. I've got a few different tiers. There's S for special or super, and then there's A, which is the second best, and then B, C, and D. And yes, there are some in D that you got to be kind of careful with that I don't think work very well and could be even potentially a waste of money. So let's start with S, the super tier, the special tier. These are my favorite objectives to use. And there's two different ones in S tier. The first one is sales conversions. Now, when you set the objective and the optimization for that, it helps Meta know what your goal is and look for those best opportunities and the right people to help reach those goals. And obviously, your audience affects that too, as does your creative. The sales conversion objective, though, is designed to try and get people to either add something to a cart and or make a purchase. So obviously, it's very, very focused. Now, one mistake or thing that you need to really be aware of, though, with conversions is sometimes if you're starting off with conversions, but you really haven't had a lot, then Facebook doesn't have much information about who converts. And so that can be challenging. So I don't always start with conversions. Sometimes I do, and it still works really well. Other times, if we start with conversions and there hasn't been a lot when somebody comes on board as a client, it doesn't work. And we have to go somewhere else in terms of a different objective first. So keep in mind, again, that's variable. Sometimes it works from the get-go no matter what. Other times it doesn't. That's why skill and testing matter, and you need to be able to make adjustments. It is one of my favorite conversions, though. It's super powerful. It's definitely in the S tier, and I highly recommend you guys test it. The second objective in the S tier is traffic link clicks. Now, that's focused on getting people to click on a link that goes to your website. Now, Facebook knows the people that are more likely to click to go off-site versus those that don't. So that can be very valuable. And when I have a situation where somebody hasn't had a whole lot of sales yet, I may test a sales conversions campaign, but I also may test a traffic link click campaign either instead of sales conversions or at the same time. And then once we get people to the website, assuming that the site is good, the offer is good, and all that stuff, and we start getting sales, then that sales conversions campaign can kick in or get started and have a real chance to succeed. Now, sometimes traffic link clicks brings in more sales than sales conversions. Like, it's really strange, but not always. I would still say, like, if you had a gun to my head and I could only pick one, it would be sales conversions. But I definitely still really like traffic link clicks, and I highly recommend you guys test them both. Those are the only two objectives in that top S tier. Okay, we're going to move down one level below the S tier, which is the A tier. Not quite as good, but still pretty darn good. And I've got three different options in here for A tier. Option number one is awareness reach. So the goal of the reach objective is to reach the maximum amount of people who may be interested in your brand, in your products, in your services. Now, I use this pretty much almost only for retargeting. So as it relates to retargeting itself, this really could and should be in the S tier, but some people also use this for cold traffic as well, which I would definitely rank this not in the S tier. That's why I kind of settled on A tier. But if you are only using this for retargeting, I would consider this S tier as one of the best. One of the things I really like about reach is that it tries to reach the max people who might be interested in you. And you've got a smaller amount of people in that retargeting audience. You want to reach all of them if possible. If you're trying to reach the maximum of like millions of people in a cold audience, good luck unless you've got some insane budget. But when it's used with retargeting, it can be really powerful and really effective. The other thing I love about reach is you can control the frequency when you use reach. So you can essentially tell Facebook to only show the ad to people a certain amount of times, or like once every 3 days, or once every 7 days, or not more than twice a week. Or if you've got a deadline coming up for a special offer, you could show it a lot, show it 3 times a day for the next 2 days. You can control that through the reach objective. So it's really powerful. I really like that. But again, I pretty much only use that with retargeting warm audiences, not cold audiences. And then the other two options in the A tier is leads, instant forms, and then also leads messenger. Those are both very similar. The difference is one is filling out an instant form on Facebook. The other is taking action through the messenger chat. And both of them essentially are having the goal of getting people to share their contact info with you and become a lead right on the Facebook and Instagram platform, either through that instant form or through Messenger itself. Those can be really effective. Now, the one potential downside of these two options is that sometimes the leads can be a little bit lower quality than somebody that becomes a lead on your website, because they don't have to leave the platform to become a lead. And they don't even have to typically put in their email address. It usually pre-fills. So it's really easy to become a lead, which is great, but the quality may not be as good as if they literally went to your site and typed in their info and became a lead that way. So keep that in mind. However, you can still get great quality leads this way, and it can be sometimes very cost effective. So leads instant forms and leads messenger definitely make my A tier list. Moving down to the next tier is the B tier, not quite as good as A and definitely not as good as the S tier. But we have leads again, but instead of forms or messenger, we got conversions/website. So the goal of this one is to get people to submit a form and become a lead on your actual website. Now, I actually wasn't like, I was going back and forth. I almost put that in A tier. I decided to make it one grade lower in the B tier just because sometimes your lead cost can be a little bit higher versus the other two lead options we just talked about. But again, it's all relative. If those leads become customers and clients more often or higher value ones, then that would be even better. So it could literally, technically, for some clients, shoot up to A tier or S tier. But I have to kind of put it somewhere when I'm generalizing, when I don't know your exact situation. In fact, that's a good point. Some of these could be S tier for certain types of situations and clients, but B or C or D tier in general. So just kind of keep that in mind. But we're going to have this be B tier. I do use this one pretty frequently, but a lot of people want leads quicker and easier for less cost. And that's why I've got those other two in the A tier. When you want leads and you want them from your website, this is the way to go: leads conversion/website. And that's a really powerful, great objective that I definitely recommend you guys test. I've got two other options in B tier. We've got engagement video views. So the goal there is to reach people and get in front of people who are more likely to watch your video. Facebook knows who watches videos versus those who never do. And so this can really help you. So if you've got a great video that you think tells a great story about your brand or product or service, and you really want to get it out there, you want as many people as possible to see this video. Maybe it's the top of the funnel play where you're looking for mass reach and you want as many people as possible to see it. I would go with engagement video views. And then what you could do is you could come in through retargeting and then retarget them to go to your website. Now, you could still have the link in your video view ad that goes to your website as well, even at the top of the funnel. But remember, the main goal of this is to get people to watch it. So keep that in mind. That's why it's in B tier. It's still really powerful and something that I use pretty frequently. Just because it's B tier doesn't mean it's not good, and it doesn't mean we don't use it. We use definitely S, A, and B tier pretty frequently, and then C and D a lot less, but there's still reasons, which we'll share in a minute. The other option in B tier is traffic messenger, which means you want to find people that are likely to start a conversation with you in Messenger. Now, the reason why that's in B tier is because typically, if I'm going to start a conversation in Messenger, I would rather have it be a lead. And we've got that covered in the A tier, leads messenger. So if we just want traffic messenger, that's definitely to me a B tier. Sometimes we will definitely run that for various reasons, but it's not as highly prioritized as some of the other things we've talked about already. All right, we've got just a couple left. We're down to C tier. Now, these are definitely ones that we use much less often. So in C tier, we've got two different objectives. We got leads, calls. So not instant forms, not messenger, but calls. So reaching people with a goal of trying to get them to call your business. Now, the reason I don't use this very much is because typically it's more cost effective and more effective in general, I've seen anyway, to get people to take an action online. And when we're using any of these other objectives that I've talked about, we can still put a phone number in the ad. We can have a phone number, obviously, on the website as well. So people that are inclined to call can still see that and take that action if they want to. But using the leads calls objective itself, I don't really like that as much. I don't use it very much. There are random times here and there where I'll test it and it could work. But for the most part, it's not one I really recommend. The other objective in the C tier is engagement, post engagement, which is getting people to interact with your posts. Now, there is one big caveat here. So if you're running a brand new ad, sometimes it can be smart and effective to get some engagement on that ad kind of quickly. Get some likes on there, get some comments and shares, just so it looks good. So in that scenario, if you're doing it just for that reason for a very short amount of time, and then you were going to switch that ad over to something else in one of these better tiers, then in that case, I would consider it S tier for engagement, post engagement, because you're just using it usually for a couple days and then switching it over. But beyond that, by itself, I definitely would consider it C tier. It's not something I would use very often, except for that reason. Or if there's like an event responses is a great one. That could be S tier if you have an event that you're promoting. But for the most part, just general post engagement, just for the sake of post engagement, for the heck of it, I definitely consider C tier. We still do it from time to time, but it's not something I recommend doing much of. And then the final tier is the D tier. I've got three options here. I do not use these hardly ever, maybe never. And I don't recommend you guys use them in most situations. And in D tier, we've got awareness, brand awareness, which is reach people who are more likely to remember your brand. Oh, wow. Well, if you're Coca-Cola and you've got tens of millions in a budget, maybe you use this a little bit here and there. I still don't think it would be effective. There's better ways to spend the money. I would stay away from that one. You've also got traffic, landing page views. Find people that are more likely to view content on your website. Now, this used to be good before all the iOS privacy stuff, but sometimes Facebook can be very limited to what they can see on your website. And because you really can't control that 100%, it is not a good optimization or objective for us. And I don't recommend you guys use it either. The reason I like traffic link clicks is because Facebook knows if they click a link because it happens on the platform. When you talk about landing page views, that happens on your website. Facebook has less visibility. It's just not as good. I would stay away from it. And then the last option is engagement. conversions with the conversion of being something like just viewing the content on your website, which I really wouldn't consider that a conversion. So I really honestly would not be using anything in this D tier at all. And I wouldn't really be using C tier much other than the post engagement or event responses, which literally could move up to S tier if you used it in the right way, like I described. So you guys, this is a great list that I recommend you guys go through. Hopefully you made some notes. If not, maybe you can listen to this again and test some of these different things. And remember, don't just pick one objective. Maybe you have to do one at a time if you have a budget that's not that large, but you can do one and then turn it off and test a different one. If you have enough budget, you can test 2 or 3 at the same time. But remember to test these different things, because in different scenarios, in different situations, one can work better than another, and it's not always the same one. Remember, you also should be testing different audiences and creatives along the way. All right, my friends, episode 361 is in the books. Thank you so much for being here. I've got a lot of great stuff coming up next week. In the meantime, if you want to connect, philgrahamdigital.com is the website, or you can DM me on Instagram at philgrahamdigital. I'll talk to you on next week's episode. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast. Please remember to subscribe and share this with all your friends. For show notes, more tips, and to learn more about Phil, please visit philgrahamdigital.com/podcast.